Okay, in this lesson, we're looking at how to play the introduction to the Rycooter arrangement of Coming In on a Wing and a Prayer. And if you want to download the tab for what I just played, you can go to the link below or the link on screen, sign up for my newsletter, and get a PDF transcription of that intro. And if that's not enough Rycooter style playing for you, this month in my membership, the Fingerstyle 5, we're learning how to play Crow Black Chicken in drop D. So if you want to check that out, just go to fretboardconfidential.com to learn more about my membership. So half of the trick to working out some of these arrangements is just figuring out what the tuning is in the first place. A lot of the Rycooter stuff is when he's playing in the key of D, he's actually tuned to an open G tuning. I have another lesson here on the channel I'll put a link to so you can check out an explanation of that. For Crow Black Chicken, I put it in drop D tuning, and then I was listening to some of the other songs on the record and was trying to figure out Coming In on a Wing and a Prayer, which opens with just this beautiful acoustic guitar arrangement. And I kept hearing those drop D shapes, but then hearing like a big low C on the bottom. And it turns out what's going on is that it's as if you made drop D tuning, like you lowered your E string down to a D, and then you lowered everything 2 more frets. So it's pitched in the key of C, but it's still all the relationship between the strings is as if you were in drop D tuning. It's kind of like a negative capo. And this is not surprising because there are lots of slide guitar solos on those first few Rycooter records where he's clearly in open D tuning, but he's capoed up to F or he's capoed to E. So this is clearly something that he does. And the other piece of the backstory is that this arrangement itself, the Rycooter version, is based on a 1958 field recording of a guitar player named Joseph Spence from the Bahamas. And Joseph Spence did lots of things in drop D tuning, and if you go and look for the Joseph Spence version, you'll hear the origin of this Rycooter arrangement and how it's similar and how it's different. So what I'm going to do is just walk through the basic chord shapes first. The transcription is pretty accurate, very accurate, I think. And if there's a bit of a discrepancy between the notation and tab that I provided and the way that I'm playing it here on screen, go with the tab if you want to be as close to the record as possible. There's a lot of nuances to the syncopation, and so I tried to get those all down on paper, but then just the main point here is just to give you the big picture, go through how the chord shapes work and what some of the syncopations are. And then if you really want to get super specific about the details, there's the transcription. So we're in D, and the melody is pretty much coming out of the chord shapes. So the melody is usually just on the top of whatever voicing you're playing, and the chords look kind of like this. We've got a D, and then an A. It's an A7, but you don't have to finger the whole thing. There's the flat 7 there on the 3rd string. And then this version of a D, where you've got the 3rd here on the 4th string, and then here's the 5th of the chord, and here's the root. And then a fill based on that. And then this is where things get interesting. So here's a D7 chord, which you might recognize in that shape. But we've got the 3rd and the bass, which we can do because it's drop D tuning, so that it's easy to reach here. Which we're then going to a G chord. And again, this G shape, here's the root because we're in drop D, so the G is at the 5th fret. This is just like if you're on a D chord and you just kind of use bar chords to get you all the way up there. And so the melody is going to come out of this shape, which looks just like a D shape, only moved up. And then an E chord, which again, we've got to put the E on the 2nd fret of the low string because we're in drop D tuning. but the rest of the chord looks just like it would in standard tuning. And then an A. Now, for the second half, again, this is like the top of this familiar looking D shape. Back to open position. Now here's G. It sounds like a G6 chord. Here's the root and the third and the 6, because the 6 is in the melody. Now here, it's supposed to be a G sharp diminished chord. But the way Rycuter grabs it, he plays first just a B flat triad on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string, and then goes to these two notes of the diminished. Actually, probably the open B string. I think I played it this way on the intro, but the open B makes more sense based on what happens next, which is a bunch of triad things. Here's a D triad again, and then a double stop with the open G and the high string, and then a G triad, same double stop, and then an E9, so taking that E7 we had before and sticking the 9th on top, and then an A6, where you're just grabbing the root, and the 6, and then a bunch of intervals of 6ths, so harmonizing a D scale. A7 to A6 and back to D. So those are the pieces of it, and again the melody comes straight out of the chord shapes. So in slow motion, this is what's going on. Sorry. So the thing about it is that the groove is kind of, the pulse is there and the groove is there, but it's not being laid out by like an alternating or a steady bass thumb pattern, right? So you've got it's kind of invisible. You have to feel where the beat is. And of course, the whole point and the whole beauty of it is it's not like da, 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 right? It's very fluid, but there is a pulse underneath it. There's moments in this introduction where kind of the beat, drags behind. There's some triplets. There's a lot of things where like the melody is getting there before the bass, or the bass is getting there before the melody. Like a lot of those stumbles. Melody gets there before the bass on that chord too. triplets. So 1 and a 2, or was it 3 and a 4 and 1. So really the idea here is just, just knowing, I mean, I'm playing it in drop D. But when you go to, if you want to try to play along with the record or listen to that as a reference, then tune everything down a whole step. But if you're just sitting around playing tunes and you're playing in drop D, then I left it in D so that if you can just sort of want to add this to the tunes that you're working on, you don't have to retune specially just for this down to C. But, you don't have to, the tab will kind of tell you, oh, this is where the notes are. And now that you know, oh, it's in that tuning, that takes away a lot of the mystery of like, where are those voicings coming from? It sounds so exotic, and until you know where it's positioned on the guitar and how those sounds are being gotten. And then once you have them, then you can see there's something comparable between this and other Raikuda arrangements in open D, in drop D, or just, other tunes that you play in drop D. So hopefully that helps kind of navigate the terrain, gives you a way into playing that introduction. So hope you have fun working through that and checking it out, looking at the tab, checking out the recording. And again, if you want to download the tab, just go to the links and grab it, and I'll see you next time.